All right, let's look at a big picture item here that's probably the most important thing coming into this election is which candidate is actually going to take care of their people the most. Which actions of these candidates support their argument that they're putting people first. Now let's start with the laundry list of the I don't give a shit moves by Donald J. Trump himself. On this campaign trail, there's been a number of people who have passed out in his audiences, who he's basically done everything from ignored to say turn up the music so they can't hear people screaming for a medic. Within the last week alone, it's October 14th. Within the last week alone, there have been a half dozen people who've passed out. There have been town halls where he doesn't pay the extra money to have the air conditioning turned on. So it's super hot and there's no water, there's no concessions because he doesn't provide anything for his people. There's very few bathrooms with those outdoor rallies that he has. He doesn't hire the bathrooms. When he has people parking 5 miles away from Coachella for the big California rally, and this is to win over a state that is ridiculously unlikely for him to win, and he's on stage after forcing everybody to park 5 miles away, take a bus, well, a dozen different buses, bring them to the location. He's on stage talking to Californians that if Governor Newsom doesn't do what he tells him to do, he's going to cut all the emergency funding for wildfires and the funding for the services to prevent wildfire. He's saying this, threatening this on stage in California after he gets everybody to this Coachella type of rally, and he only keeps 1 or 2 buses on the payroll past the drop-off because he doesn't want to spend any money. So besides people passing out in the rally and very limited resources for him, making fun of them after they pass out if they're overweight, that type stuff, he's threatening not to help Californians with wildfire emergency funds or anything else. And he has thousands and thousands of people standing in a parking lot for hours because there's 1 or 2 buses. These 1 or 2 bus drivers, there is a man and a woman, and I don't think there was anything more than that. The male got punched by an angry MAGA person because he was the only one kept on the payroll, him and his one person for a little while, and then it was just him. And he was put in the hospital. The woman that left because she was spit on, she was pushed, she was threatened, and all she was doing was getting paid to drive a bus in a circle. This is how MAGA is treating people. This is how Donald Trump is treating his potential voters. And then he goes to these random stretches of political PR stunts, setting up in front of a business in Florida right after the first hurricane, right before the second hurricane, after telling everybody in Florida who just got their asses whooped that if they accept help from FEMA, then they will lose their property because they accepted help. They're also telling them how FEMA and Joe Biden aren't there to help them. They're there to take their property and sell it to whoever they... All these conspiracy theories that he's feeding these poor people who just had everything they own destroyed. Many may not have insurance because of the insurance debacle that DeSantis and the Trump administration caused in Florida. And they believe this stuff so much that when FEMA goes to help them to save their lives, they're refusing the help. And Donald Trump and the Republicans don't care. Donald Trump and the Republicans don't care to the point where Congress, before the second hurricane hit, went on vacation and refused funding for FEMA, additional funding. So FEMA is now spending next year's budget. Congress is still refusing to come back. So when you're looking at one side versus the other, who's going to actually take care of the citizens, there is some very, very blatant marked situations of evidence that show who cares about who. The Republican Congress left. They denied additional funding for FEMA for the last 3 years. Vetoed everything because the storms are getting bigger and the damage is getting more expensive. They said no. And they're mainly red states that they said no to. These are your constituents. Well, technically, we're all their constituents because they're supposed to represent all of us. But they're not even representing the people who are voting for them. They're actually giving their voters information that puts their lives in danger, and their voters are going, yes, we believe you, we'll vote for you again, as they're losing everything and they're refusing help because. And then you've got the other side of the fence, that the anger that they're causing and the vitriol towards immigrants, towards the Chinese flu, the Gung flu, and all that other crap that had all these Asian people attacked, unalive, their businesses burnt down because someone had to stir some shit up. Now, these are American lives. Haitian immigrants eating dogs and cats, these are American lives. These are actually American citizens that helped Springfield rebuild and this economic boom because they were brought in as laborers because the Americans weren't cutting it. They weren't doing it. They weren't stepping up. So they're actually literally building this country. But because of the vitriol, they're in danger. Healthcare workers right now who go into these homes alone because you've got the corporate greed that takes all their protections away, you know, like beepers, panic buttons, and maybe a second person. They're greedy, so they're taking all that away, but the vitriol that's spewed by the Republicans have people believing that their health care issues is because the evil Democrats and Joe Biden in office is giving all their health care money to illegal aliens to stay at the Four Seasons and getting thrown to jail. And you're believing it. This is the Republicans versus the Democrat. This is the part of this election that means the most. Is the recognition of who's actually having the citizens' backs and who's not. And it is brutally open and honest. It is brutally out in the open. We have a presidential candidate that has not even addressed issues. But he will open his mouth to cast hatred and anger and vitriol towards one group of non-white, coincidence, I'm sure, people. That's what we have on one side. And the threat of never having another election and it being all this allegations, despite the mountains of evidence, it's still false allegations by the Democrats. There's logic that needs to come into this, people. Because this next decision could be the last one we get. If it goes Democrat, we're going to have more elections. He's said it too many times that he's staying if he gets in again. And he's going to stay under a whole new set of rules. And he has said what those rules are. But his faithful refuse to even read what he's saying he's going to do. When he's not talking about the evil people in this world, from Taylor Swift to Mexicans to Haitians to Asians to Arizonians. When he's not going there, he's talking about the manhood size of a pro golfer versus the Democrat vision for the Harris presidency. Building small businesses, fixing what's wrong in immigration. And there's actually plans to do it, not just concepts. So what exactly are you voting for on the Republican side? It's a question you need to answer.